Laughter on Call, Courage, one laugh at a time, tells the story of Laughter on Call, and it's on What's Next. Welcome, everyone. My guest is Dani Klein Modisett. She is the founder of Laughter on Call. And thank you so much for joining me, Dani.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Well, we're going to be talking about why you got started, but let me tell the audience a little bit more about you. You created Laughter on Call after seeing firsthand your mother, who has Alzheimer's, benefit from comedy care. And that's a really interesting term that I'm going to have you explain it just a little bit. You've been working as a comedian, stand-up comic for over 20 years. You have taught at UCLA. You have written 2 books. And now you have brought laughter to the biggest changes and challenges and things that we all experience, and that's parenting, marriage, and now you brought it to senior care. So thank you so much for joining me. How did
Thanks.
how did you happen to decide to start Laughter on Call?
So, what happened was I moved my mother from New York City, where she had been living. She was diagnosed probably 7 years ago with Alzheimer's, and it was becoming prohibitively expensive for her to live there. And I just wanted her to be closer to me and my family. So I found a location in Los Angeles for her, a home that specializes in memory care, actually. And she came in, and it was very. They have a very elegant lobby, so there was, she felt like she was in a hotel, I think, for a little while, and then I think realized, no, not a hotel, and not going back. And she became withdrawn and depressed, and she wasn't eating, and I just felt so terrible about it. And I was at my dentist, actually, and of course, because it's LA, she's like a life coach, and I was telling her about what was happening in my life, and she said, oh, and I said, I just wish I could hire a comedian to cheer my mother up. And she said, oh, well, why don't you? You should do that. And that's kind of how the whole thing started. I put a notice up on Facebook looking for comedian interested in gerontology, paid gig. And I found someone very, very quickly, and she came over, and she was just so honest, which is a real benchmark of what we do. She wasn't like making it pretend like it's not happening. Like, she was very honest. She sat with her. She got right at eye level with her, and made her laugh. And I was like, this is amazing, this is fantastic. And so I hired her right away, and basically within like a week, my mother was eating again and singing and joining the community, and just felt much more connected to her environment, which is what I really was hoping would happen, and it did. So yeah.
Well, as you were taking notes, obviously you were experiencing life through your mother's eyes, maybe for the first time in a
Yeah.
while. And as a stand-up comic, was the person that you hired doing something that in the back of your mind go, I can do that. I have those abilities.
Oh, well, there's no question that I have those abilities. It's just that I'm her daughter. And this is something I hear a lot from family members and from people, who caregivers who work with this population is, they, even as their cognitive decline is happening, they still recognize, like, she still knows that I'm her daughter. So I can't walk into the situation cleanly and be like, hey, let's laugh, because like we're blood. So that's really the beauty of what Laughter on Call is that we bring in people who are totally fresh and committed to joy and making the person feel better with no history there of like the loss, because the loss is always there on both sides, even though the person may no longer be verbal. There's a feeling there, and that's what Laughter on Call does. Is like they come in, and there's no history. We're just there to bring joy to the moment, and we're able to. So I can do it for somebody else,
Mm,
but I needed an outside person to come in and do that.
okay. So are there key things that uh, you now want the comedians who come to work for you to cover, like if there are specific eras, or if are how do you make your comedy uh, that keys into that particular person's wants, needs, desires, and things that they remember?
Well, that's such a great question, Diana, because we specifically have a 5-page intake form that goes to the families of the person in decline, and it has 17 questions on it about everything about their life. So it's very specific, and it's not just like, oh, they loved Barbara Streisand. It was like a vacation that went wrong, or a family member that they either made them laugh, or a pet, or so the comedian comes in with a wealth of information specifically about the person with the intention of making a connection somewhere in there, and because they're comics, they just keep throwing it out there until they see the person light up. So it
Mm.
is very specific and customized for the person.
So once they see that person light up, then do they go back to some of the material that they've just covered, or do they keep wading in that area or that topic? I mean, you've seen your mother come alive when she
Right,
was laughing and
right.
laughing. So did that person then continue in on that stream of thought and consciousness?
Well, I mean, like any comedian, if you get somebody laughing, you're going to repeat it. You're going to try to top yourself, and you're definitely going to exhaust that. So I think that that's what happens. Like you keep going and you keep playing with it, and then when they lose interest, you bring in something else. But that's the art of it, is kind of coming in with this what we would call a set list, essentially, and just going through your set list. But if something is killing, as we say, connecting with the person, you're going to massage that for sure because you're onto something. You've seen the connection.
How long is the set that you're doing? We'll call it a set, with then either someone like your mom or people that have hired your services?
So what we're realizing now is about 50 minutes, 50 minutes is good. And it can include singing and definitely music. Sometimes if they love fashion, they'll be like, we'll decide, oh, we'll just bring in some fashion magazines. And so we use props. We're definitely prop comics. We're not afraid to do that. Sometimes it involves, like, I really love the idea of breaking bread with someone because I think it creates just an immediate connection. So we find out like their favorite food that they are allowed to eat. And so that's part of it. But we find it's like 50 minutes. And even for our interactive storytelling shows, which are for a group of people, we're finding like 50 minutes is the attention span. I mean, we stay and talk for an hour. We're happy to talk. But in
Mhm.
terms of expecting like them to be dialed in, it's kind of exhausting. Like hopefully at the end of one of these sessions they should be a little tired because there's no sleeping. We really engage every single person to the best of our ability. So I
Okay, so you have two ways of doing this. So you have the one-on-one model,
right.
and you have the bigger audience model.
Yes, yes. So the in addition to the one-on-one, we do something called interactive storytelling, and that is kind of it's an traditional improv show with like a Mad Libs element. I don't know if you remember Mad Libs where you fill in. So we have the people in the room in a memory care or assisted living. It's not necessarily just for memory care, but we send in two comedians and they do some warm ups, some physical warm ups, some vocal warm ups, some breathing, just to get everybody kind of awake. And then they set out to create stories that based on suggestions from the audience. And for those people who are still mobile, they can participate. So they play characters. So if we're going on a cruise, maybe someone in the room is the captain of the ship and or the waitress and so it's really fun. It's very engaging for everybody, and we've had great success with that too.
Action, adventure.
On the waterfront.
On the waterfront. Oh, that's one of
Great
my
film.
favorites.
Yes.
So let's put that in the top
Okay, we're
three
gonna put
list.
that in the queue.
All right, all right.
What's
Ooh,
another?
What's your favorite movie?
You're expanding. You have some people that you call on in the LA area. That's where your office is, and that's where you work out of. But you're
Right.
also now making this a national model.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's actually since the last time you and I spoke. We're in Maine, Atlanta. We're starting in Atlanta next week. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut. We're talking to people in Colorado and San Francisco. So, we're there's a lot of, as I suspect, unexpected when I first thought of it or saw it work. I was like, wait, this could be everywhere because comedians always need to work. They always need to, it's a struggle in the beginning, or maybe not in the beginning. You need supplementary income. And there's Alzheimer's people everywhere now. So I thought, oh well, this could be everywhere. This is an idea that really could reach a ton of communities. And because actually we had an article in the London Times, so we're dealing with London now too and trying to place people there. So yeah, I mean, we just need people to call us and say we need you, and we can pretty much make it happen, which has been exciting.
So your need is you need comedians. And then what about facilities? How do facilities connect you, and what's the best way for them to work with you besides, or families?
Yeah, absolutely. Just laughteroncall.com. Just go to the website. There's a phone number there. Or you can just email me personally, Dani at laughteroncall.com, and we get on it immediately. Like that's pretty much it's I want to say, like, when you call like a telethon and there's people at the desk and they're just like, that's what we do now. We just sit and we have our comedians, we pair them, we do a test run, so yeah, that's all you do is call us.
Okay, so it's so out of LA, call you. You can help set that up. You're looking for comedians all across the country to help to join you. And then, are there set fees for particular? I would think one-on-one might be a little different than a group fee. And
Right.
is that again just contacting you for that information?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it depends on what you want because we also do stand-up shows, so everything is priced accordingly, and just to make sure that the comedians are compensated because we're not volunteers. We want to make sure that the value of what a comedian brings is appreciated, and and then we just send people out and we try to fit with people's budget. So if you have a certain budget, just let us know and we can deliver what we're able to deliver. Because I think what I'm learning is that across the country, the markets are different and what people need is different and what people spend on this is different. So yeah, it's not hard. Just call us.
Let's leave the audience then with one story about your mom. You've observed her with the comedians, working one on one. So w- what what did you see that it was like, oh my gosh, that is so wonderful to see her expression?
Well, it's interesting because we did an episode of the show The Doctors recently, and they did the most amazing video montage of my mother. Now, she has like three different people, but one of the people that she's very connected to is this young actor, and he comes like 3 times a week, and she just from the minute he walks in the room, she just lights up. I think maybe she thinks it's her boyfriend, which is fine. We're good with that because they do a lot of hand holding. Because at this point, my mother's not very verbal, like probably mostly nonverbal.
Mhm.
But you can see the look in her face when she sees him, and he too is. That's also what's been remarkable is how moving it is for the comedian and the messages that I get. Like, thank you so much for this opportunity to use my talent in this specific way to make a difference in people's lives because it really does. It just helps them to feel seen in a situation where most people are uncomfortable. They're just a little uncomfortable, and we're not uncomfortable. We're there to say, like, basically, we love you and we see you exactly where you are, and that's what I observe with my mother and particularly Michael. He's very special. He gets very emotional when he talks about her. So
Oh. Well,
yeah,
thank you. Thank you for sharing your story about your mom. Thank you for sharing your story about Laughter on Call. And I really appreciate you joining me today.
thank you so much.
So let me tell my audience again, if you want more information about what we just talked about, just go to laughteroncall.com.